Good morning, USA, and welcome to another episode of the Bernie or Bust Show. Unshaved, unbathed, unedited, unscrupulous? No, very scrupulous. Uncouth, disgruntled, bamboozled, overwhelmed. It's an interesting week with what's going on in the heating up of the battle between our two progressive frontrunners, Bernie Sanders and Elizabeth Warren. Crystal Ball has some good insight on it.
First, as the race narrows to a top three with Kamala, Booker, Beto, Buttigieg, and others falling away, Warren will be the primary beneficiary. All of those candidates hold appeal to affluent white liberals, and that vote, let's call it the Rachel Maddow vote, is rapidly coalescing around Elizabeth Warren.
I hope that sticks. The Rachel Maddow vote. We've got the white liberals, and they're coalescing around Elizabeth Warren and she's going to go on and explain why. But that reasoning, the Rachel Maddow vote, that's a great slogan. I hope it sticks.
Now, this trend is reinforced, of course, by the glowing media coverage of Warren. Of course, the media consistently reflects the tastes and preferences of affluent white liberals, so no surprise there. Just consider the number of non-ironic takes on the incredible brilliance of Warren's selfie line. It's not hard to imagine this white liberal affection carrying Warren to wins in the overwhelmingly white states of both Iowa and New Hampshire. It's also not hard to imagine those wins resulting in a kind of momentum that leads enough voters of color to come over to Warren for her to outright win the nomination.
Did that terrify you? That makes a lot of sense, and it's easy to picture, and it shows what we're up against here in the Bernie or Bust team.
Now, in another cycle, I would have been thrilled by a potential Warren nomination. For one of the more progressive members of the Senate to be our party's standard bearer would have seemed a wonderful thing. In fact, in 2015, I begged Warren to run and to challenge Hillary Clinton.
So did I. I put a big survey out, change.org survey, begging Elizabeth Warren not to run, but to endorse Bernie Sanders. She did neither. She made a backroom deal with the Clinton machine and stayed out last time and came in this time. And for more information on that, you can read about the cabal in Hollywood on my Medium article. I've been linking to that for a long time, so if you haven't read it yet, it's wiki proof that the Clinton machine was behind the new flood of Democratic candidates. So check it out.
Warren at that time was an outsider populist warrior who'd yet to have her fire dimmed by the ways of Washington.
Dimmed.
But now,
she's
if I'm
dimmed.
being honest, the thought of Warren as our nominee fills me with dread. Her courting of the Dem establishment has made me skeptical that she'd really break the kneecaps required to bring the big structural change she's fond of talking about. But what really terrifies me is that Warren is likely to lose to Trump. And if Warren loses to Trump, not only will we have the utter catastrophe of 4 more years of national destruction, the establishment and the media will all...
4 more years of national destruction pales in significance to the pending doom of climate crisis. That's even... And Trump would move us quickly towards disaster, but so would Joe Biden. And as she says about breaking kneecaps, Elizabeth isn't going to break the kneecaps required. She's not going to take on big military. She's not going to take on anybody, really. She'll wag her finger at them, and we'll end up with climate crisis equally bad, with lip service paid, as we, either way, plummet off the cliff.
Blame us progressives for the loss. They'll say we wanted to go too far too fast, that we would have wiped the floor with Trump. If only we'd run Amy Klobuchar or Steve Bullock instead of AOC Senior. And then it will be another generation before we have a chance to run a real progressive for president again, if, of course, the country even survives that long. But the truth is, the reason Warren is likely to lose has nothing to do with ideology and everything to do with culture. To put it quite simply, Warren is a wine track candidate. As much as she wants to run as the down-home Oklahoma girl, she hasn't been that Betsy for a long time.
Hold on a sec. I'm going to get me a beer.
Be honest. Do you really believe that is the candidate who can beat Trump. And
No.
this is what pundits consistently fail to understand. Voters don't choose candidates because of their ideological fit. They choose them because of their cultural fit.
Right.
It's no accident that the first to fully fall for Warren were the post-grad types, the folks who've successfully ascended the meritocracy. They jumped through all the collegiate hoops. They fundamentally believe in the system because it's worked for them. They want to help working and lower-class Americans, sure, but they don't actually trust them. I've Got a Plan for That is like a magical elixir to this group. It says the experts have been consulted, the white paper has been drafted. We, the ascenders of the meritocracy, will decide what is to be done about these poor, struggling...
We, the defenders of the meritocracy. That applies to a lot of my college professor colleagues. The whole point of higher education has been to defend the meritocracy. And if you think about it, that is a defense of white supremacy. It's that blatant. The bigotry that we have, the elitism that we have is as heinous, as reprehensible as anything that we decry on the right.
Denizens of the working class. You can close your eyes and just imagine I've Got a Plan for That emblazoned on t-shirts for Al Gore or John Kerry or certainly for Hillary Clinton. That fact alone should strike terror in your heart. There's a reason why Biden and Bernie tend to appeal to working class voters and have broad overlap between their coalitions in spite of their vast ideological distance. Neither has taken an overly intellectual approach. Both make an appeal to emotion, Biden to nostalgia and Bernie to righteous anger. There's a reason why Warren and Buttigieg have broad overlap between their coalitions in spite of having very different ideologies. Both have a pitch centered specifically around how smart and special they personally are. Behold my resume. Behold my plan. This appeal to white papers, intellect, and resume items frequently wins the day in the peculiar battlefield that is the Democratic primary. But it's a catastrophe come November.
Right. So the wonky people and the white people, the affluent people, the competent people. I learned that word from the Brits when I was in that Facebook group and they were all lining up behind Warren. They love that word, competent. They want the competent people. I get things done. And so then that's where the superdelegates come in. They're part of the elitist, competent people, as are the Hollywood news anchors and the whole competent team, the people who have climbed to the top of the meritocracy and want to defend it from everybody else. But then you get to the general election and the grubby populists weigh in, and you can see, look what happened last time. It's going to be a debacle. It's going to be much worse, even if you look at the grubby populists I know, the truck drivers and the loggers and the other people I grew up with. If they'll take a look at the wine and cheese candidate here, and they'll scoff. There's no way in hell they're going to vote for her, and so you've got a double whammy. You've got the grubby populists on the left, on the Bernie Sanders team, who won't vote for her, and you've got the Trump supporters who won't vote for her, and she'll get creamed. There's no other way to say it.
Especially against the master of emotional lizard brain appeals, Donald Trump. After all, just consider the numbers. A winning candidate will be able to motivate new working class voters of color or flip Obama-Trump voters, preferably some of both, frankly. There is no indication in Warren's base of support that she is particularly likely to do either. Right. And then there's Pocahontas. Now, is it a culturally acceptable nickname? No, it definitely is not. Is it brutally effective? Yes, it is. Because what it really signals, as my friend Sagar has pointed out, is that Warren is fake. That she says she's the beer-drinking Oklahoma girl when all the cultural signaling is Harvard professor. That she says she's going to really change things, but still wraps herself in the language of capitalism, promises the establishment that she's a team player, and secretly courts Hillary Clinton. She says she's different, but she plays the same Washington political games as all the rest. Now, none of this is set in stone. Trends can change rapidly, of course, and with this guy as president, you simply have no idea what the week, let alone the year, might bring. But this is me pulling the fire alarm. Dems have repeatedly told pollsters that their number one priority is to beat Trump, and yet here we are, rapidly moving towards nominating exactly the type of candidate who is consistently rejected by voters.
There you go. Kyle Kulinski.
But Elizabeth Warren voted for a gargantuan criminal military budget to go to our man-baby-in-chief, a guy who shouldn't have his finger anywhere near that red button, a guy who shouldn't be in control of a military. You would think the logical position would be, hell no, I'm not voting for this guy to be the commander-in-chief of this even larger military than it was before. Why would I give him billions more to play around with? Well, she voted yes on that military budget. Bernie Sanders did not. So important, guys. One of these candidates has raised a tremendous amount of money from the military-industrial complex and done favors for them. Guess what, guys? Raytheon is headquartered in Massachusetts.
Yep.
So, there's been extensive reporting on how Elizabeth Warren has indeed done favors for Raytheon and the military-industrial complex. The other one has not. The other one has not raised money from them and not done any favors for them. The next. One of these candidates waffled on Medicare for All until very recently, and the other one never has.
She waffled. She's still waffling. I've got a good article on that.
You say Medicare for All, do you mean, for example, the bill that you've co-signed onto in the Senate, or do you think it could also mean Medicare buy-in, et cetera?
So I support Medicare for All. I have for a very long time.
No.
And I believe that there are lots of ways to get there. So, for example, even in the bill that I've co-sponsored with Bernie and others, it's got a 4-year period in it. It's got different ways that ramp in. It's got some groups that never get into it. For example, veterans will always have a separate healthcare system. There are a lot of different ways that people talk about and have introduced into Congress. Some are actual bills. Some have just talked about it. We can start lowering the age. So you could do it rather than just saying how it is we're going to build the ramp. You could build the ramp by saying 60 years old is the age for Medicare, 55, 50, or you could do it the other way. Everybody under 30 is covered, then everybody under 35, then everybody under 40. Different ways to move into the system. But there is one thing I would really like to underline here. First is the principle, and that is where we're aiming as Democrats, and that is that every single human being in this country is covered by health care at a price that
Democrats are aiming for that? How could she say that? That's utter bullshit. How can she say that Democrats are aiming at good coverage for all? If Democrats were aiming for that, things would look a lot different.
They can afford, that healthcare is a basic human right, and we are fighting for basic human rights. And I would like to contrast that with the Republican Party that's not having this conversation about the best ways to get there, but instead is still out there actively working to try to take away healthcare from tens of millions of Americans. So there are a lot of times I'm proud to be a Democrat, but when we're talking about healthcare, this is one of the biggest distinctions in something that would directly touch the lives of pretty much everybody in this country. And I like where the Democrats are on this. But at the end of the day, I know what the center is. And the center is that we have high quality access for every single person.
Oh, no, see, what you need to understand is Republicans bad, Democrats good, and you have all these plans that all these different Democrats have, and the core of it is the same, which is we want to get universal coverage. So, whether it's Medicare for All, or Medicare for All Extra, or Medicare for America, or a public option, or any of these are all, oh my God, the core of it is so wonderful, and the Democrats are fighting for the right thing, and the Republicans are fighting for the wrong thing. Now that is, if you follow this stuff closely, you know that is just factually untrue. That 90% of the healthcare plans proposed by other Democrats are simply attempts to continue to protect the profits of the health insurance industry in the status quo.
Yes.
It's let's do some tweaks around the edges and maybe get a couple more people coverage, but
that little, I mean, he has lots of good reasons. You should watch this whole thing, but that really shows where Elizabeth's heart is, because if she could come out and say that the Democrats are trying to give us comprehensive single-payer health insurance, that it's just a blatant misrepresentation. And if she can say that, if she can do that, then you know that when she pivots in the end of this, there's no way that she's going to give the American people what they want. Even Republicans, lots and lots of Republicans, a majority of Republicans want this single payer health insurance, and there's no way in hell that her big money sponsors are going to allow this to happen. There's no way that she's going to break their kneecaps and make it happen.
We're still going to have the core of the system be for-profit health insurance companies existing and controlling the markets.
Yes.
And, of course, screwing people over, because that's what they do. Their whole business model is, the more people I deny care, the more money I make. So having the profit motive involved in health insurance is a problem in and of itself. Now, recently, her rhetoric, especially in debates, has been much more strongly in favor of Medicare for all, and that's her trying to assuage left-wing fears to try to say, no, I'm totally like this guy Bernie, right? I mean, Medicare for all, sure. She released her specific plan, guys. I kid you not. There's not a single place where it says single payer.
Yes.
Which, by the way, is exactly what Medicare for all is, a single payer. The government is the single insurer. Doesn't say that anywhere in her bill, and it also uses the weasel words of increased access to health care.
Right.
So, now you might think that's a small thing. I do not.
No. And I debated how much of this video to show you. He has lots of good reasons. So if we don't get to those in another show, please watch this. I'll link to it underneath, and I hope you'll watch it. We are getting to a very serious point, and it's only September. We are getting to a crucial moment. I didn't predict this coming as soon, but I did predict it, that the powers have swung over behind Elizabeth. She's making a surge in the polls. She's coming up around Bernie, and I've got lots of evidence for that. But if you're paying attention, you'll see it, and you'll wonder how she's getting away with it. The biggest point is Crystal's point that the culture wars are going to be the decisive factor. The people who can't vote for the wine and cheese candidate but could vote for Bernie are never going. If we leave them out of the equation, then it's 4 more years of Donald Trump. That's the biggest point. That's the one I hope you take away from this Bernie or Buzz Show episode. So, have a good day. Hope to see you tomorrow. Keep on burning.